Hey guys, are you ready to make some delicious cinnamon rolls? In this video, I'm going to be going over my recipe and method for these cinnamon roll / sticky bun creations. Let's get started. First, you're going to want to prep all your ingredients. You'll need flour, sugar, salt, yeast, water, buttermilk, unsalted butter, and 3 yolk. Make sure with whatever yeast you use that you're following the manufacturer's directions. I usually prefer instant yeast, but I couldn't find any at the store. So here I'm using a quick rise yeast, which instructed me to have a warm temperature and a teaspoon of my already scaled sugar go to my yeast to feed it and make sure it's activated and starts to foam. With an instant yeast, you don't have to activate it and you can just throw it into your bowl. But here we had to make sure it was foamy like this to make sure it would do its job. So now that my yeast is activated, I am putting all of my ingredients in my mixing bowl. We've got the buttermilk, which was at room temperature, our yeast, and then on top of that, our flour. Make sure your salt does not touch your yeast. It kills yeast. And then we put our sugar and yolk and room temperature pliable butter. We want to make sure all of our ingredients are about room temperature so that we keep our final dough temperature about room temperature as well. And this will just help keep that yeast going and stay active. When mixing your dough, I have the first 3 minutes or so on stir, and then after the dough comes together, I will put it up to 2. It really helps to use one of these dough scrapers to scrape down the side of your bowl to bring your dough together. Once your dough is in a nice ball and going around the dough hook, then that's when you turn it up to speed 2 to really develop some gluten in your product. Usually in this sized KitchenAid, I am mixing for 5 minutes tops altogether. So that's on the store speed and speed 2. Once that timer goes off, I will stop my bowl and work it more on my table. In this recipe, I'm not developing a ton of gluten. This is a very stiff dough. I do want to make sure that it's not tearing a lot. So I'll work it a bit and form a nice tight ball to let it rise and have its first fermentation. Once you're done working it on the table, make it a nice tight ball, oil a clean bowl, and then let it rest for 30 minutes to an hour, depending on the temperature of your home, or until it almost doubles in size. Once this dough is rested and covered, it's time to make our filling. So here I have 4 ounces of granulated sugar, 4 ounces of light brown sugar, and 10 grams of cinnamon. Also, with this much sugar, you definitely want to pair it with some salt. Balance that flavor out a bit with a nice healthy pinch of salt and mix it all together. Until you get something that looks like this. And we're going to add 1 egg white. Save it from your yolks that you separate earlier. 1 egg white is going to go into our mixture and make a paste. Put plastic wrap right over that and save it for later. We can prepare our pan now. I usually use a 13x9 Pyrex, or you can use a 1/4 sheet tray. Make sure to grease up your tray no matter what you're using. If you have pan spray, that's great too. I just didn't have any. So I'm using oil. And then here's where that sticky bun creation sort of comes in. I put butter down on the bottom. This butter is going to help just become a sticky, gooey mess as some of the sugar melts down to the bottom of the pan. Once your pan is prepared, you might be ready to punch down your dough. So we're gonna let the gases out and it's gonna be time to roll out. If you feel that your dough is retracting a lot, cover your dough back up after you release the gases and let it sit for 10 minutes. When you're ready to roll out your dough, make sure it gets to about 18 inches in length and then 10 to 12 inches in width. Don't be afraid to utilize your hands and really pull that dough to make nice 4 corners and have a good rectangle. You want a really nice rectangle to make sure that when you're rolling up your cinnamon rolls, you're going to be able to utilize your end pieces. Get it nice and even throughout. So once you have it nicely rolled out, we're going to get that paste that we made earlier, our brown sugar and white sugar and cinnamon paste, and put it all over. You can leave about 1/4 of an inch clear at the very end of the dough closest to you. And then the rest, get it all spread out because you never want to have that one piece of cinnamon roll that didn't get as much filling as the other pieces. Once you have it all nice and laid out, you're going to roll it up from the top down. So make sure it all gets rolled in. I even pull the dough up from the back. I'll pull it up and stretch that dough underneath and make sure it makes a nice circle. Nice and tight. Incorporate the sides and make sure the dough is reaching all the way to the ends of your roll on the sides so you don't have a mini cinnamon roll once you cut. Then if you just sort of rock your jelly roll onto your counter and sort of bring in and tighten it up, it's going to seal your seam. If you're having troubles sealing the seam onto your jelly roll, then you can always pinch along the line, pinch it to the other piece of dough and make sure it's all staying together. This dough is such a stiff dough that you really don't need flour to work on. It's not going to be sticking to your table. Once you have your seam sealed, measure your final jelly roll length and make sure that you cut. I like to cut in the middle, and then I'll take the half piece and cut it in half again. The other half piece, cut it in half again, so now you have quarters, and then each of those quarters is going to be divided into 3. They turn out to be about 1.5 inches if you have that final length of 18 inches as I suggested. But here I just sort of reshape them and put them into my pan. And I absolutely love this ratio of dough to filling. If you prefer to roll out your dough thinner and make that 10 to 12 inch a little bit wider and have more of a wrap, you can do that. Your dough will be thinner, but this is such a sweet filling that I enjoy the thicker ratio of dough to filling. Once you have them all placed into your Pyrex or quarter sheet tray, then you're gonna wrap them up and put them in the refrigerator overnight. This is the best part of this recipe because then you don't have to get up in the morning to make these. You have them ready to bake off right in the morning. The refrigerator will retard your yeast from over fermenting, so don't worry about that. And then in about 45 minutes before you want to bake, take them out of the refrigerator to let them get to room temperature and have a little bit of a final rise. Preheat your oven and then bake them. As you saw when I took them out of the fridge, they had that nice syrupy kind of look already on the bottom, and imagine when that's cooked, it just makes it a beautiful sticky bun finish for the bottom of your cinnamon rolls. So you have many options for when to make your cream cheese frosting. You can either do that the day you're making your dough, which is usually what I do, or even while they're baking. But when you're ready to make your frosting, it's very simple. You're going to want room temperature, cream cheese, and butter. Cream cheese can be a finicky beast. Make sure you take your cream cheese out an hour before you're going to make this. You want 227 grams of cream cheese, 113 grams of butter, and you're going to mix that till it's nice and smooth. Make sure to wipe down the sides of your KitchenAid and in your paddle so there's no butter lumps or cream cheese lumps that aren't getting fully incorporated. Once it's nice and smooth, you're going to add all your sugar. Here, I add all of my powdered sugar at once. I use 250 grams. This is going to be a cream cheese frosting that is still runny. It's not pipeable. Most cream cheese frostings have double the amount of sugar than this recipe, but I prefer a nice tangy finish to pair with our very sweet cinnamon roll. After you put in all your sugar, make sure you have that pinch of salt in there as well. You're going to add your teaspoon of vanilla extract and just make sure everything's nice and smooth, and then store overnight in the refrigerator if you make it the day before, or put it onto your cinnamon rolls 10 minutes after they're out of the oven. The biggest drawback to baking with a buttermilk product is that they are prone to overbake. And once they're overbaked, it's going to be dry. So make sure at about 20 to 22 minutes bake time, you check with your finger and go into the middle between two cinnamon rolls where they're touching and just kind of pull back and see if it's doughy still in the middle there, or if it's solidified and looks baked. That's when you're ready to come out. After adding your frosting and just sealing in all that flavor, it's time to enjoy. I wish we had smell-o-vision because these smell so divine and they taste even better. These cinnamon rolls are everything you want in a cinnamon roll. They have a delicious buttery bottom that almost crisps up the bottom to make it like a sticky bun, but also yields in a nice gooey feeling with also a nice tender but substantial dough that doesn't make it so overly sweet that you feel sick to your stomach after eating. It's just outrageously delicious. Please let me know how you guys like this recipe in the comments below once you try it. Have a wonderful rest of your day and happy baking.